Thank you, Liz, and welcome everybody. It's great to see so many faces. There's people I haven't seen for a long time, and it's wonderful to see here. I see Colleen smiling, so it's great to see you. So thanks everybody for joining us. It's wonderful to have everybody here. This is really exciting for us, and we're really focused on unique aspects of the Arctic Research Plan. We've hosted several of these webinars, but each one of them is a little different, and so but there's a lot of similar information. But we'll talk about that as we go on. So today's speakers are Renu Joseph, and she's the program manager for the regional and global climate modeling at the Department of Energy. Candace Nachman, and Candace is the Arctic liaison and senior policy advisor for NOAA Fisheries. Excuse me. Michael Palkowski, who's the program scientist with NASA's Terrestrial Ecology Program, and me, I'm Larry Hinsman. I'm the executive director of IARPC, the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee. I'm also the assistant director for polar sciences in the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House. So we're going to tell you a little bit about IARPC, give you an overview of the draft plan, and we're going to focus today on the foundational activities and share how to submit comments on the plan and provide an opportunity for you to ask any questions you might have. Actually, I think today we're talking about the PA2, aren't we? We're not talking about foundational activities. Excuse me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why this work is important, why it's important to me. So almost every job I've had in my adult life has been focused on research. And in my mind, there's just no better job in the world. This is the top of the evolutionary job ladder. Every day is new, unique, and a chance to learn something new. And I love working with teams of researchers. It's so much fun to share the enthusiasm of learning, and so fulfilling to help others understand. And as I grow older, I derive more and more happiness and satisfaction in seeing my former students or colleagues, many of who are on the call today, make important contributions to the sciences and sharing their knowledge and expanding our collective understanding. So I've been blessed to be able to work in the Arctic. There are so many people, many wonderful people who live and work here, and I've been blessed to have them as my friends. So they helped me understand that the Arctic was a system and not just an experiment, but interdependent linkages among physical, biological, and social processes. I started out studying freezing and thawing in soils and moisture moving through the soil, and that vision really grew to see those processes components of the Arctic. And the Arctic is part of the global system. And so I'm just delighted to play a part of this, and I hope you will be too. So let's turn it over to Candace. Maybe Candace will jump in and tell us why this is important to her.
Thanks, Larry. As Larry mentioned, I'm Candace Nachman. I work with NOAA Fisheries Office of Policy as a senior policy advisor in our headquarters Arctic liaison. And I've been working on issues in Alaska and the high Arctic since about 2006, 2007. And it's really been, I think the most meaningful part for me is that I have been able to work with and learn from the different Alaska Native organizations, the different indigenous groups. I started working with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission back in 2007, 2008. And for me, really to be able to experience and learn and understand that the Arctic it's a home. It's a place where people live. Their culture is vibrant, and it really is a place of sharing knowledge, sharing thoughts, and working together to better understand what it is that's going on in this region that is changing so rapidly, and to be able to make those connections and bring it back to the work that I do at NOAA Fisheries that's tasked and charged by Congress with protecting our living marine resources, being able to do that in direct cooperation with the people who live there has been really important and meaningful to me in my years doing this work.
Thanks, Candace. And Renu?
Hi, I'm Renu Joseph, and as Larry introduced, I am a program manager of modeling in the Department of Energy. The program that I'm responsible for is, and I co-manage with two other program managers, is called Earth and Environmental Systems Modeling. Now, when you look at the Earth system and you look at how the Earth system is changing, you find that the maximum changes are in the Arctic. And so with that in mind, if you look at, think about the Arctic, that there's no better program to be involved with in terms of an interagency setting than as part of the IARPC activities. As part of IARPC, I get to interact with program managers and scientists and all the people with different expertise, and we can jointly look at what are the main changes that we need to focus on with respect to Arctic. And Arctic, it's a system and not an individual component. What happens in the Arctic affects the whole globe, and that is, and models are the tools that make that understood to people. And so that's the reason I'm part of this, and I work, and I like my contributions of my work to the Arctic. Thanks.
Thanks, Renu. And Mike?
Yeah, hi. As Larry mentioned, I'm Mike Falkowski. I'm a program scientist in the terrestrial ecology program at NASA headquarters. And one of the things I do as part of my position there is I co-manage the above program along with Hank Margolis. And there's lots of reasons why this type of work is important to me. And I think first and foremost is that I grew up on the southern edge of the boreal forest. And so this is really sort of an area that I've spent a lot of my life in. And in my unbiased opinion, the Arctic and the boreal regions are the most beautiful and interesting places on the planet. And there's a lot of fascinating things going on there in terms of just some of the basic ecology, but also to the interconnectedness of sort of the social ecological systems there. And sort of as I transitioned through my life and got more into science and research, I learned more about the Arctic. I was amazed about how connected the Arctic is to other systems and components of the global Earth system. And sort of going forward, I'm very curious to see how everything unfolds in the Arctic, given the rapid changes that we all know about and the rapid growing global interest in the region. And as Renu just alluded to, I'm, through IARPC and through other interagency avenues, I'm really excited and interested to see what we can do through the terrestrial ecology program and also NASA to learn more about how the Arctic is changing and what the implications are for people that live there as well as the global population, not only through our NASA programs, but also through interagency interactions through organizations such as IARPC.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks all. We're really lucky. We've got a great group together today, but it's not just today. These individuals have been helping us throughout develop this plan, and we've got a wonderful team of authors, and we're really, really fortunate to have such great engagement from the agencies. So Liz, next slide, please. I'm going to tell you just a bit about IARPC. So as I mentioned previously, IARPC is the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee. And so we're part of the Executive Office of the President. And so we're in the executive branch. And we exist to enhance research in the Arctic by bringing together the leaders from the 16 different agencies and departments and offices across the US federal government to facilitate and foster and promote collaborations among federal agencies. So IARPC was created under the Arctic Research and Policy Act in 1984. And this act called for a comprehensive national policy focused on research needs and objectives in the Arctic. And it was established, it established IARPC and our sibling organization, the Arctic Research Commission. And together, we, the Arctic Research Commission and IARPC, help coordinate and manage and direct the research that is conducted by the federal government. Next slide, please. So these are the various agencies. There's the 14 agencies plus the other two are my office, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and the Office of Management and Budget. So IARPC brings together these federal agencies to coordinate Arctic research and reduce the duplication of efforts. IARPC is organized into several levels of staff and participants. Our top level is the principals, and these are high-level policy people from each of the agencies. And so we have one policy level member from each of these 14 federal agencies, which guides the U.S. investment in research in the Arctic, and as well as representatives from OSTP and the Office of Management and Budget. The IARPC principals meet annually to provide guidance and advice and really line us out for what we're going to be doing for the next year. And they also help us, direct us to develop the 5-year Arctic research plan, and sometimes direct our staff and the Secretariat to address particular issues. So we've had special assignments over the years. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. So our current Arctic research plan is this describes it right here. So there's 9 goals in our current research plan. Every 5 years, IARPC is directed to create a new 5-year research plan. And this goal is created in consultation with in partnership with the Arctic Research Commission and the government of the state of Alaska, and also residents of the Arctic. We also include engagement with the private sector and public interest groups. So this graphic that I'm showing you now includes the 9 research goals, which are in the current plan, which covered from 2017 to 2021. So it ends at the end of this year. So this plan identified critical areas where U.S. Arctic research could support U.S. policy from community to global scales. And it also looks for areas where federal investments can be enhanced through interagency collaborations. So the plan aims to advance knowledge and decision support for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It is implemented in part through the IARPC Collaborations website, which hopefully many of you are already members of that. So the Arctic Research Plan focuses on research that will be enhanced through cooperation between the federal agencies. And our plans do not attempt to address all Arctic research, but just areas where enhanced collaboration can lead to greater achievements. So this current Arctic Research Plan was released in December of 2016, and it'll end in 2021, and it's time to start working on the next one. Or it's time to issue the implementation of the next one. So next slide, please. So the current plan and our future plan we're working on also incorporates the principles for conducting research in the Arctic. Research working in the Arctic have a responsibility to respect local and indigenous cultures, knowledge, and advance stewardship of the Arctic environment. So the core principles are here, and that is they must be accountable, establish effective communication, respect indigenous knowledge and cultures, build and sustain relationships, and pursue responsible environmental stewardships. So I'm sure you're all familiar with that, but hopefully you'll share that with your students and colleagues so that we can further those principles. Next slide, please. So this is our plan for developing this plan, essentially. So we're in the second public review phase of the plan development. So you can see the second column from the right. This is the phase that will last until the public comment period ends on June 11th. So a federal steering group organized the initial public scoping comment period that began last year in April of 2020 and closes with a community workshop, or closed with a community workshop in September of 2020. And many of you actually on this call were involved in that workshop. Thank you very much. So starting in November of 2020, federal drafting teams have been working with that information to create the draft plan. And we could not have done it without the input from the Arctic research community and many of the people on this call. So thank you very much. Looking ahead, after the public comment period closes on June 11th, IARPC will consider all of the input received and revise the plan as appropriate. And we are aiming to release the final plan by the end of December 2021. Next slide, please. So this is a framework. This illustration shows the 3 main components of the Arctic Research Plan. The next Arctic Research Plan includes the policy drivers, the priority areas, and the foundational activities. This plan approach, this structure is very different than previous plans. The priority areas and the foundational activities are highly interconnected and very matrixed. So the foundational activities, which you can see at the bottom of the slide, relate to and support the priority areas. The foundational activities are critical processes to guide the federal government's approach to Arctic research and aim to improve research and collaboration on the priority areas. And these are intended to continue past the 5-year timeframe of the individual plans. And so those foundational activities are very important and will continue across all Arctic research. So the priority areas are really a cross-cut focus that are identified as needing additional attention. Our research that through the public comment and workshops and outreach have been identified as really critical urgent needs. And both the priority areas and the foundational activities will require and benefit from the existing IARPC collaboration teams that are represented by the collaboration logo in the middle of the graphic. And so I'm going to briefly go through just the main elements of the plan. So next, please, Liz. So this plan actually includes the same policy drivers as the current plan. The plan we're developing has the same policy drivers as the current plan. And it's surprising, but over the last 50 years, the national interest and objectives in the US Arctic have remained remarkably stable. And these remain a good foundation grounded in history and are applicable to our national efforts. So these policy drivers are well-being, which is really focused on enhancing the wellness of Arctic residents with an emphasis on the themes of cultural vibrancy, economic development, mental and physiological health. And 2 is stewardship, which advances responsible management of the Arctic environment with an emphasis on, globally. So stewardship advances responsible management of the Arctic environment with emphasis on globally driven changes. The 3rd one is security, which intends to strengthen our national and regional safety, as well as address risk management and emergency preparedness themes. And the 4th one are Arctic to global systems, and that is in essence improving the understanding of the Arctic as a component of the planet Earth. Next slide, please. So our plan has 4 priority areas, each of which identifies a broad cross-cutting goal, which expresses the convergent outcomes that will be realized from research investments. So the 4 priorities in this plan are community resilience and health, Arctic system interactions, sustainable economies and livelihoods, and risk management and hazard mitigation. The priority area format is really a significant shift from previous plans. As I mentioned, it was very different. This plan is different than the previous plans we've had for the last decade. So this plan takes a targeted approach to priority areas that will enable IARPC and IARPC collaborations to help address the most pressing Arctic research needs that really require a collaborative approach. These priority areas are designed to respond to the research challenges that were identified by Arctic communities and federal agencies with a presence in Alaska, and federal agencies with Arctic investments, and also following input from the state of Alaska and other non-federal partners. Please keep in mind that, like the previous plans, this plan does not cover all research conducted by the agencies, but focuses on areas of priority for interagency collaborations. So we're going to go into a little more detail on these priority areas, and we'll end this section by welcoming Renew and Candace and Mike to provide more context specific to the second priority area, so the Arctic system interactions. So I'll turn it over to the group, please.
So Larry, I think you'll continue through.
No, this is still me. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's go through I'll introduce the, thank you, Liz. You think I'd know how to do this? I think this is our 4th webinar. I think I'd have figured it out by now. So, okay, so the goal of priority area 1 is community resilience and health, which is obviously to improve community resilience and well-being by strengthening research and the tools to help us better understand the social, natural, and built systems of the Arctic. Next slide, please. And the goal of priority 2, which is what we're going to focus on today, is Arctic system interactions, is to enhance our ability to observe, understand, and predict and project the Arctic's dynamic interconnected systems and the linkages to the Earth system as a whole. So we really want to understand the role of the Arctic in the global climate system. Next slide, please. The goal of priority area 3, which are sustainable economies and livelihoods, is to monitor and maintain and proactively adapt the Arctic's natural and social and built systems to promote sustainable economies and livelihoods. And next slide, please. And the goal of priority area 4, which is risk management and hazard mitigation, is to secure and improve the quality of life through an understanding of disaster risk exposure, sensitivity to hazards, and adaptive capacity. We also have, next slide, please. Let's see what we have. 5 foundational activities that are incorporated into this plan that broadly describe the essential activities that are associated with most Arctic research projects. And the 5 foundational activities are co-production of knowledge and indigenous-led research, data management, education, monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction, and technology innovation and application. So these 5 foundational activities are critical to support a robust and impactful federal research program in the Arctic and ensure that the research programs are listening and inclusive of other voices, knowledge holders, and scholars. Each foundational activity is intended to continue past the 5-year timeframe of individual plans. So now I'll turn it over to Renew, Candace, and Mike. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Larry. And Arctic systems integration, this particular priority area actually brings together and builds on a work that is currently ongoing in IARPC in terms of the different collaboration teams. It builds from work that IARPC does currently. It looks at the interconnected, a rapidly changing, complex Arctic system and how one change in one component of the Arctic system affects the other. So actually, in order to predict and to understand the future of the Arctic and of global change as a whole, we need to understand these interconnected natural systems as well as their connections between the natural and the human systems. Ultimately, this priority area seeks to advance the understanding of the Arctic system and its connection to the Earth system as a whole. Whatever happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic, but it affects the whole Arctic system, our whole Earth system. By increasing this understanding, we can better predict changes to the system. We can also support strategies that minimize the negative impacts of Arctic change and take advantages of the opportunities of the changing Arctic. So reiterating, the goal is to enhance our ability to observe, understand, predict, and project the Arctic's dynamic interconnected systems and their linkages to the Earth system as a whole. Now, if we go to the next slide, why do we think this is important? Why do we need to study the Arctic system? As Larry was mentioned, and it was mentioned earlier also, the Arctic is the fastest changing region in the Earth system. The temperature in the Arctic has doubled, is more than twice the global average. This is known as Arctic amplification, but those changes not only affect the Arctic, but also affect the mid-latitudes and where we live in the US also, and in the mid-latitudes. So it is important to understand how the changes in warming affect the Arctic and what is the response of the Arctic. And so now my colleagues will go on further and describe the response. So next slide, please.
Yeah, thank you, Renu. So as you can imagine, sort of writing this chapter where we're focused on understanding Arctic systems and their connection to the Earth systems, it was a little bit challenging. It's a very, very broad thing to write about. And so we really started to view this chapter as a framework upon which we can build our interagency research efforts from. And so as you read through the PA2 chapter, you're going to see that we pull in some different examples, and these are by no means an inclusive list of things that we could pursue in terms of interagency collaboration going forward. But some of the things that we do call out are looking at changes in Arctic sea ice, changes in Arctic permafrost, the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, and then of course changes in ecosystems, things like changing disturbance regimes, changes in wildlife populations, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. And not only are we interested in understanding how each of those individual components are changing in the Arctic and how those changes impact social ecological systems in the Arctic, but we're also interested in understanding how they interact with each other, but also how they interact with the Earth system as a whole. So things like how changes in clouds affect sea ice, for example, how changes in circulation in the Arctic affect mid-latitude weather, and how things like permafrost thaw releases carbon to the atmosphere, which in turn contributes to global warming. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Renu and Mike. And so as Mike was just discussing some of the ways that this affects, has the different effects on the natural and the human systems, we're also concerned about how this is going to have effects on food webs, what that means for food security. We're also really concerned about what this means for infrastructure, which is also connected to one of the other priority areas that Larry mentioned in this plan. And so some of the examples that we call out in the chapter, and as Mike said, by no means is this exhaustive, but looking at sea ice change and thawing permafrost, how that affects the coastlines, the changes in sea ice and water temperature and what that means for the shifting distribution of species and the marine ecosystem as a whole. Next slide, please. So all of the priority areas, also the chapters take a look at how they connect to the foundational activities, which, as Larry mentioned, are a new thing for this particular plan. And so this priority area really does have strong connections to all 5 of the foundational activities described in the plan. But just to mention a couple right here, models that quantify the drivers of Arctic change, as well as the interactions and the feedbacks of these changes with the Earth systems, are needed and really critical to understanding the interconnected Arctic system. Additionally, for observations, different kinds of observations are also needed, including intensive short-term observational campaigns, long-term satellite and ground-based observations, and also models of both the individual components of the Arctic as well as the comprehensive Earth system. Additionally, understanding the interconnectedness of the Arctic system cannot be done successfully without working directly with the people who live in and are directly affected every day by the changes occurring in the Arctic region. And so therefore, co-production of knowledge and Indigenous-led research is a critical foundational activity area for this priority area. We also see connections to the work of nearly every single federal agency that makes up IARPC, as well as basically every collaboration team and self-forming team that currently exists within IARPC to help us advance the goals and objectives of this particular priority area. Next slide, please. So at the end of the 5-year period of implementing this new plan, We really do hope that by enhancing our understanding of the changing Arctic system and its connection to the Earth system as a whole, that we will be able to reduce uncertainties in our predictions. A focus of this draft plan is to include goals and objectives that will help IARPC agencies with their decision making. And so, for example, with this particular priority area, we hope that activities undertaken here will help agencies be able to secure infrastructure that is at risk from coastal erosion. For example, assist NOAA with management of fisheries by understanding the changes in the ecosystems and the shifting distributions, and also allow us to make sound decisions regarding food security concerns. So we look forward to your questions today and to hearing more detailed comments. And I'm now going to turn it back to Larry to talk about implementation and how to provide comments.
Thanks, Candace. And Renu and Mike, appreciate it. So yes, as Candace said, I'm going to talk a little bit about implementation and how we're moving forward. So this current plan, the plan that's open for public review, only provides really high-level implementation guidance to IARPC and very general measures of success by which we're going to hold ourselves accountable. This plan has to be implemented through a biennial implementation plans, which will aim to align federal resources and partnerships with other non-federal entities. So we will be developing that. We also welcome input into that implementation plan. So the implementation plan will be guided by the new priority area teams, and those are open to all interested parties. And these teams will direct and coordinate activities to reach the plan goals and to ensure the coordination of resources and collaboration of resources to address those pressing needs. So the existing collaboration teams that have been developed to help with the current plan are extremely important for execution of the new developing plan. And we need these existing collaboration teams to coordinate closely with the priority area teams and continue to be a vital communities of practice. So the current collaboration teams will contribute to the objectives of the priority area collaboration teams, but may also pursue interest and other activities outside of the plan. Again, as I mentioned previously, the Arctic research plans do not cover all the research done by the agencies and IARPC's interest, but simply and those activities will extend beyond implementing the Arctic research plan. Next slide, please. So this is an illustration of how the federal agencies and departments, which are shown on the left, may contribute to each priority area, which are shown in the center. And I want to highlight for you that on the right are the collaboration teams, the existing collaboration teams, with their anticipated contributions to the priorities shown by the connecting lines, the gray lines. And you'll notice that there's significant contributions from each of the collaboration teams to each of the priority areas. And we hope that the collaboration teams and everybody looking here, seeing this, will continue to see and develop connections to the priority areas. So this is a great opportunity to think broadly and across disciplines to figure out where to contribute. So next slide, please. So we are accepting comments on the draft plan through June 11th. We're specifically looking for comments on the priority area goals and justifications and potential partners on the foundational activities, but also on the implementation and the metrics. And we appreciate and welcome all of your thoughts on the plan. Next, please. So this is how you may contribute to the review and how to comment. And so you can submit comments to the Federal Register notice on the Federal Register website. And so that you can see that on the slide. I guess actually it's not, we'll go to that next, the Federal Register website. But you can also email comments to IARPCplan@nsf.gov or leave a voicemail at 703-783-1658. And for those on the phone, it's 188-657-7759 for toll free. These calls are limited to 5 minutes, but you can submit multiple comments. And you can also submit hard copy comments to Roberto Delgato, who's also on the call today. And so, Roberto, we appreciate you handling this for us. So Roberto is at the Office of Polar Programs, National Science Foundation at 2415 Eisenhower Avenue, Alexandria, Virginia, 22314. Next slide, please. So after the comment period closes, the federal agency staff will review and consider the input and revise the plan as necessary. By the law, the revisions have to be done specifically by federal agency employees. We will make all the comments submitted through the mechanisms through the Federal Register notice and the responses publicly available with attribution on the IARPC Collaborations website. The questions and comments made in this meeting will not be part of the public record. Only comments submitted through the mechanisms outlined in the Federal Register notice will be formally included in the public record. And our goal is to have this plan out later this year. So if you have more questions, you can find more information and see how to submit comments at our website, which is tinyurl.com/arcticplan. And the plan itself can be downloaded at tinyurl.com/arcticplandownload. And these links all go to the IARPC Collaborations website. So if you have questions, please contact the Plan Development Director, Nakush Carlo, or Danielle Stickman, who's also on this call today, or the IARPC Secretariat, or me. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And I'll note that this webinar is just one in a series of informational sessions. For the most part, the webinars have contained most of the same information. However, each webinar focused on certain sections of the plan. And if there's a particular priority area you're interested in, then we recommend you go back and review that specific webinar, and you can get information from any of us on how to find that link. Next slide, please. So with that, I will thank everybody for joining. Again, the links are right there on this slide, so please copy those down, and thanks for your attention today, and we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you everyone for joining us for the presentation part of the webinar. We are now, I've opened up the chat for questions. So you can, if you have questions or comments, you can put them directly in the chat, or you can raise your hand using the reactions button on the screen. You can also, if you're on the phone, *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself.
I hope you will all take some time to review the plan and think about it. As you review it, you may have more questions, so you can always come back to us.
Hi, Larry.
But I do want to emphasize that it's.
Hi,
Oh,
Larry.
hey, Gay. Go ahead.
This is Gay Sheffield in Nome, Alaska, with UAF Alaska Sea Grant. I'm just wondering. I continue to see these and attend these seminars. What is the linkage directly to the communities in like, say, I'm a little Bering Strait centric, so in the Bering Strait region? That's one question. What efforts are being done to engage with to get the local communities' concerns? And then two, in a region that's undergoing, and it's really concentrated here, as you know, the environmental change has rolled into the ecological change in the Bering Strait region big time, which is now rolling into the industrial change, right? Fishing coming up from the south, commerce coming down from the north. And then now we see military action. Certainly an area like the Bering Strait region is engaged in multiple federal levels, from Department of Defense to national, Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, Department of Interior, both for wildlife. We've got NSF from the research, marine science side of the house, as well as terrestrial base. It just seems like we are a really sticky wicket right now for the research community. We really need it. And one, I wonder how much input has come from the communities, from the tribes, not the tribal organizations, although that's important too, but actually from the tribes, or how much engagement is being put on the tribes. And then two, why we continue, I guess, in this region where we really need research, we are continuing to see the changes and have to bring those, bring the information to the urban-based researchers, to the responding agencies. We're not seeing a change yet where they're ahead of the curve and actually bringing information, you know, like here's a breaking issue. You know what I mean? Like, so one, how is the plan being tribally engaged? And two, when you have a hotspot region like the Bering Strait, is this IARPC plan going to be able to zone into a specific region, I guess? Thank you.
So, okay, thanks for that. Thanks for attending so many of the sessions and being such an active participant. So we really appreciate it. You've been wonderful for, well, I've been involved in this for the last year, and so I appreciate all of your contributions. So I'm gonna start out by answering it, and then I'm gonna toss it over to Danielle Stickman. And Danielle has been our Indigenous engagement lead person. She's been working a lot with the tribes, and I'll ask her to step in just a second. But first, I'll start with so starting in April of last year, we really had a concerted effort to solicit input from the communities. And from all of that input, we kind of condensed that down and started out the workshop that we held in September. And in September, we invited a lot of members of the communities to get together. It was a virtual workshop like everything was in September. But we really did solicit and listen to that input that we received. And it's in essence that the plan has not changed much from the input that was gained and agreed upon in that workshop. So I really do think we are being sensitive to and receptive to the input and concerns of the communities. If you are familiar with the previous Arctic research plans, you will see that this plan is very much different than previous plans, in that previous plans were really focused on the disciplinary concerns of physical and biological sciences and what role the Arctic had in the global system. And we're still doing that. This PA2, this priority area 2 that we discussed today, is really focused on that. But we're also taking on a lot of the other of higher order problems where they're more socially relevant issues, and taking on more of the human dimensions type of issues. And that's because of the input from the communities and from the input from the state of Alaska. We're taking on concerns that really are of importance to individuals, to people, and to the communities of the Arctic. And so I think one, we really did try and solicit input, and two, we're really sincerely trying to be receptive and responsive to that, to those concerns. And as far as what we've done here recently since the workshop, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle. Danielle, would you please jump in here?
Thank you. And thank you, Larry. Thanks for all you do too. Thank you, Larry.
Go ahead, Danielle.
Good morning. Yep. Good morning. Thank you for the comments, Gay. This is Danielle Stickman for those of you who are on the phone. Since I talked to you, we've sent another email to tribes and haven't heard any response. And we've presented at a few conferences, hoping to present at the Western Alaska Interdisciplinary Science Conference and Forum that's happening in a few weeks in Bristol Bay. But really, we're a small team, and so it's taken some time just to get a hold of regional coordinators, and I've been talking to a bunch of people, and then also being in the region right now and talking to coordinators who are are really busy. My main thing lately has been also to lay out some information on why the plan is kind of relevant to the region, and those who are familiar with the plan understand that why it is, and from my standpoint, just putting it into a perspective that makes sense and is easy to digest. So hoping that the efforts will gain some leeway. We also have offered printed materials to tribes, but also being very aware of how busy everyone is, especially since everything has turned virtual in the high expensive bandwidth. And I've taken down a lot of the notes and suggestions you've suggested, and I really appreciate all of the help that others have put forth. And so we're still working on improving it, but I think we still have a ways to go. And yeah, that's what I have right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.
I guess one other thing I'll add too is that, really quickly, I'm going to add one thing is that, I really want to emphasize that the work that has been done by the previous two Arctic research plans really led us to this point. And so developing that basic understanding of the physical and biological processes, ecosystem dynamics, that's really led us to the point where we can actually start addressing some of these higher level social issues. And so that's really gotten us to where we are now, but we're not done. And so that's why we're still continuing this focus on the Arctic system interactions. And that's why that's still really, really important to helping communities, helping individuals understand what the changes are, what the ramifications of the changes are, and how to adapt and prepare for the future environment that's likely to see. Anyway, I'm sorry, did somebody else want to jump in here?
Oh, I was just going to bring up our next question. So Tyler Moon is wondering more about impacts to the current collaboration teams once the new plan is being used.
The impacts to the current collaboration teams. So the current collaboration teams will still be critical to executing the new Arctic research plan. And so I think if we look at the questions from the priority areas, you'll see that they are really multidisciplinary. And so there's almost every one of the collaboration teams can address some component of each of the priority areas. And so they're certainly critical in several, if not all, the priority areas. And so we're hoping that all of the researchers who are actively engaged in the current IARPC collaborations will remain engaged and help us take on some of these other problems. And so it will be an additional level of collaborations and cooperation to get the collaboration teams working together to address some of these higher level problems. But at the same time, the collaboration teams, if they have specific issues and specific challenges that they want to address now within their collaboration teams, that's great. They can continue and partnering on them within their teams and to further advance the science in that way too.
And as a reminder, if folks want to ask questions aloud, you can raise your hand using the reactions button or *9 on the phone. I've gotten a couple questions directly in the chat, so I'm going to keep going through those for now. So we have one question asking how much interaction has Department of Defense, Department of Navy, and I think Naval War College have had with this research plan draft?
So Department of Defense actually is one of our collaboration team members. I'm sorry, I'm missing. The Department of Defense is actually one of the IARPC, of the members of the IARPC agencies. So DoD is important there, and they've been very active and very engaged. And so there's a tremendous amount of research done within the DoD agencies, and so they've been wonderful partners. And I'll also say that through DHS, Department of Homeland Security, which is the home of the Coast Guard, they've been very engaged too. And so we are receptive, and we've been fortunate to receive input from those groups, and they've helped guide the development of this plan and been very active contributors. As far as the Naval War College, I can't think what the engagement has been there. However, the Naval Postgraduate School has been very, very active in the Arctic system and the interactions in the past, and CREL, the Cold Regions Research and Engineering Laboratory, they've been very active. And so there are a lot of laboratories and a lot of specific partner-to-partner collaborations.
And then I'm seeing a comment in the chat just agreeing with Gay's comment, saying Alaska agencies also have boots on the ground and need research results that are practical in addressing immediate local challenges rather than global ecosystem impacts.
Absolutely. And we really do, we've been tried to be really receptive to the state of Alaska input, and hopefully we can receive further guidance and their response to the Arctic Research Plan, so we can further develop the implementation plan so it does work for the state of Alaska.
And I just want to point out that Larry and myself and Liz will be able to stay, and hopefully Candace, Mike, and Renu will be able to stay on the call for a little bit longer if people's questions keep coming in.
So those are all the questions that I've received in the chat. Never mind, there is a new one. Is there a central clearinghouse that collects the data from the various organizations and agencies?
Central warehouse that collects the data. Well, no, not all the agencies and not all the universities. So the NSF is sponsoring the Arctic Data Center. I can't remember what the exact name of it is, down in Santa Barbara, and they've done a really, really wonderful job from university researchers of facilitating a mechanism to collect and distribute that data. There's so many other agencies that are really actively engaged in Arctic research and just research in general. So, USGS, NOAA, BLM, BOEM, and they all have their own mechanisms of collecting, storing, distributing, archiving data. DOE has got a remarkable amount of data collection, and that's the ARM program, which is one component of DOE. Maybe I should let Renu answer this, but they have their own mechanism of making data available. So as one central warehouse of data distribution, it doesn't exist, but I don't think that's a terrible impediment to access to federal data. But Renu or actually Mike, NASA also has a remarkable data assets available. One of you want to jump in here, please?
Yeah, I can just comment on the NASA end of things in terms of our remote sensing. Any of the satellite remote sensing data, or a lot of our field data sets too, eventually become available via the DACs. And there is no one central repository in terms of what data sets go where. Certain data sets from certain satellite missions go to one DAC versus another. And so the two of the DACs associated with our projects are the Land Processes DAC and then also the Oak Ridge DAC. And so those are two great avenues where you can find remote sensing data sets, including Arctic data sets. But there's no one central repository.
Renu here, and the same thing at DOE. We don't have a single repository, but ARM is the atmospheric radiation measurement group, where they take observations for at Barrow and other places, and there is an ARM site which makes the data available, and the same thing is there with respect to NG. NG is the next generation ecosystem experiment, and they make their data available through their project sites.
And I also forgot to mention the National Snow and Ice Data Center in Boulder as well. That's where a lot of our Arctic remote sensing data goes.
Candace, do you want to jump in here with NOAA? And again, it's very similar. It's just many excellent data archives.
Yes, I know that we have some, and I'm forgetting how to say them without just using acronyms right now, but also I will say that NOAA has their There are PAR guidelines, which is the public access to research results, where we do have to make data available within, I think it's 1 year or 2 years, I can't remember now, of finalizing the projects. And there's also the NGDC, but I can't remember what that stands for, the National something Data Center.
National Geophysical Data Center.
Thank you. Forgot the G.
And I've also been dropping in the chat a couple of other links to the Arctic Data Center, as well as to our agency pages on IARPC collaborations, which have quite a few links to these and other sites where data is collected, are collected. Scrolling through the chat, we have a question from Murat. Do we expect or prefer comments from individuals, or is it okay to submit comments as a group or team?
Absolutely. We'll accept good ideas from everywhere, every direction. So we appreciate the wisdom of the group. We think that in the past, we've gotten, there have been workshops held and group ideas submitted together. And I think that those have been really, really powerful. At the same time, we don't want to discourage individuals from submitting comments. And so we welcome input from every direction. Thank you.
And a question from Wilbert. It seems to me that an explicit mandate for the collaboration teams will be important to generate continued engagement and enthusiasm from the communities. What room will there be in the implementation plan for the collaboration teams to include collaboration team specific goals or deliverables?
Absolutely. So Wilbert, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by an explicit mandate. We don't tell the collaboration teams what to do. Is that what you mean? You want explicit direction?
Well, in the current plan, there are obviously the performance elements that each collaboration team works towards, right? But from your response to the earlier question, I understand that there is not going to be explicit goals or deliverables for the collaboration teams, and that every collaboration team is being left to its own devices, basically. But is there still an opportunity for the collaboration teams to include some specific goals in the implementation plan?
Absolutely. So I didn't mean to imply that the collaboration teams were going to be left to their own devices or left floating. So the implementation plan, which we hope that everybody will contribute to, the implementation plan is where we will define explicit goals. So each of the priority area right now, they have I guess to get the language right, correct? Each of the priority areas right now have a general goal where they want to approach. In the implementation plans, in the biennial implementation plans, we will define explicit objectives, explicit deliverables, explicit timelines and milestones that we're going to be working towards. And one, we want the collaboration teams to contribute to those objectives, but also we hope the collaboration teams also help define those objectives. And so, no, the collaboration teams are an integral component of this execution. So we think the collaboration teams are in the best position to know what the expertise is that we have, what are we capable of achieving in the next 2-year and 5-year period. What can we do? And so we're very much hopeful that they will contribute to the goals of the priority area, but also continue to work on what's important to them too. Although I think what the activities that the collaboration teams are taking on now are all quite relevant to the priority area goals that we wanted to achieve.
Before I read the next question, I just want to remind folks that if you'd prefer to ask questions out loud rather than using the chat, you can raise your hand using the reactions button or *9 on the phone. And while people consider doing that, I will move to Catherine's question. How easy will it be for different disciplines to speak with one another as we try to increase collaboration among specialties? Said differently, can satellite imagery model builders easily communicate with phytoplankton biologists in a way that really advances our understanding of the systems in the Arctic?
And that's the beauty of IARPC, and that's where IARPC is really shined and what it really does well. And I think that's what is going to make a huge contribution in the future. And that IARPC has built communities of practice where there's groups of people have collaborated and cooperated and contributed around a certain discipline, so that that not just federal researchers, but non-federal researchers, university researchers, international researchers have come together to contribute around a common problem. And so we've made some huge accomplishments over the last 5 and 10 years just by getting these collaborators together and working together in partnerships. And what we're doing now is we're trying to build these same types of communities of practice to take on the same types of systems approaches on these other types of problems, these social issues, these human dimensions, these other processes that are ongoing, where it really takes a multitude of disciplines to address them and resolve them. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head of what we want to do, and I think that IARPC Collaborations offers that mechanisms to achieve that.
That's good. That's reassuring, Larry. Thank you for taking that question. I just, coming from a medical specialty that's fairly deep, I know what it's like to talk to a colleague in my specialty using all these acronyms that no one else understands, or terms and whatnot. And I just wondered or had a concern, is that going to be an issue as a model builder tries to speak with a biologist? Will they say, I don't understand what you're saying or whatnot? But it's very reassuring that through the collaboration teams, we can explain things in a way that everyone in the room can understand. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine. I think, and thank you. You've been wonderfully engaged for throughout this whole process. So I see your name all the time, and so it's wonderful to have you participate like this. So thank you very much for all that. I will agree that there are some challenges in front of us as far as getting these communities of practice together, speaking the same language. There's going to be some learning curves in this, and so we've got to take on these complex problems that require multidisciplinary approaches. We're going to bring people and disciplines together, and people are going to have to learn how to speak the same language. And so it's going to take some time and some effort, but I think the benefits and the achievements that can come out of this are just tremendous and well worth the effort.
Are there any final questions? Again, you can raise your hand using the reactions button or *9, or put them in the chat. I am at the end of my list of questions that I've received.
I see Stan Wolschlager popped up here, and so welcome, Stan. I haven't talked to you for a long time. It's great to see you. I guess I think Stan is the leader of the NG project, the NG Arctic, Next Generation Ecosystem Experiment in the Arctic, and that has been a very much of a program to pull together multiple disciplines to resolve great challenges. And so Stan, can you take a minute and just tell the group, what do you think as far as, is this achievable? Can we do this?
Well, I think we can, Larry, and having been our first chief scientist for NG Arctic, that getting started is often the most difficult challenge, because you are stepping into these areas from your own disciplinary background and experience and language. But we have found that over the years, you develop a shared language, you develop a shared respect and appreciation for what others do in different disciplines. And then you start to see the value and the reward of multi, if not truly interdisciplinary research, and how you can begin to answer some of these very difficult questions. Now, you would initially look at those from a siloed disciplinary perspective, but as Larry knows, and others, Colleen on the call, when you begin to break down those barriers, then you begin to realize the full potential of what the community can do. These best practices, best community practices can do to address some of these really daunting questions that Larry and others have been talking about. So I think, you know, it's not without growing pains, but lessons learned are valuable and they do point us in the right direction. And so I do think, Larry, that we can address these challenges ahead of us.
I'm really excited and optimistic too. And I guess it seems like we're winding down a little bit, but one thing I'll just ask is that, you know, I really do ask people to read the Arctic Research Plan and then think about implementation and offer suggestions on how we should move forward. What do we need to focus on for the specific objectives? How do we need to approach the implementation? So any input, any guidance you can provide is just going to make the plan stronger. So I welcome your input and thank you for your suggestions. Liz, do we have any other final questions?
No final questions. So I just put in the chat, the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel and on the event page. If not today, then tomorrow. So if you have colleagues who wanted to join in but weren't able to make the time, they will be able to watch it. And again, we hope to hear from you and your thoughts on the plan through the Federal Register process. And thank you for taking the time and the extra 14 minutes today to join us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all. And thanks to our presenters. So Candace and Mike and Renu, thank you very much for helping us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.